Why intelligent people feel so lonely. Dostoevsky once wrote, "The cleverest of all is the one who calls himself a fool at least once a month." He wasn't glorifying intelligence. He was pointing at something deeper. The more clearly you see the world, the harder it becomes to feel like you belong in it. And that kind of loneliness isn't loud or dramatic or visible. It shows up in the small gaps between what you notice and what everyone else seems to overlook. The loneliness that hides in plain sight. Most people think loneliness is about being physically alone, but intelligent loneliness is different. It's being surrounded by people and still feeling like you're watching life from the outside. You hear the words in a conversation, but you also hear everything underneath them: the insecurity, the hesitation, the contradiction. You don't just react, you interpret, you analyze, you understand, and after a while, you realize you're not lonely because people aren't around. You're lonely because your inner world has no easy translation. The weight of processing life too deeply. Psychologists call it depth of processing. Your mind doesn't just skim the surface. It digs. It questions. It connects dots other people don't even see. Not because you're trying to be different, but because your brain refuses to stop at easy answers. And that difference in depth creates distance. Not emotional distance, just a different rhythm of thinking. A rhythm fewer people can match. Why depth creates discomfort. There's a study by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the researcher behind the idea of flow. He found that complex thinkers tend to experience more internal conflict and less social ease. Not because they dislike people, but because most conversations feel incomplete. You want clarity. You want honesty. You want meaning. But meaning requires awareness, and awareness requires maturity. And maturity is something not everyone reaches at the same pace. So you start holding back, not to appear smarter, but to avoid the exhaustion of constantly explaining your thoughts to people who aren't really listening. Loneliness isn't a weakness, it's an alarm. Here's the part people never tell you. Your loneliness isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It's proof that something around you is too small for you. Your nervous system knows when your environment can't hold your depth. The ache you feel, it's not emptiness. It's a signal. Your inner compass whispering. You're thinking at a level your surroundings no longer match. Most people mistake this for isolation. But for intelligent minds, it's misalignment. And misalignment feels like loneliness only until you recognize what it's trying to tell you. The moment loneliness becomes self-protection. Eventually, you stop trying to blend in, not out of pride, but out of truth. You can't keep simplifying yourself for conversations that never go anywhere. You can't keep dimming your insight just to avoid making others uncomfortable. Loneliness becomes less of a wound and more of a boundary, a quiet refusal to betray your own clarity, and that's when everything shifts. You outgrow people before you leave them. One of the quietest signs of intelligence is outgrowing rooms before you physically walk out of them. Your mind shifts first. Your standards follow. Your environment stays behind. You realize the people you once fit with no longer speak to the person you're becoming. And that space, the gap between who you were and who you can no longer pretend to be, is where loneliness grows the most. The burden of feeling too deeply. intelligence isn't just about thinking deeply. It's about feeling deeply too. You feel the weight of nuance. You feel the fragility of relationships. You feel the consequences of words before you speak them. You feel the reality behind people's behavior, even when they hide it from themselves. Awareness strips away illusions, even the comforting ones. And illusions are what make life simple for most people. The mind that won't shut off. A study from the University of London found that people with high cognitive activity struggle more with rumination and insomnia, not because they're anxious, but because their mind is always active, analyzing, predicting, understanding, reworking. When your inner world never quiets down, even silence feels crowded, and that makes solitude feel heavier than it should. Understanding people makes it hard to need them. This is one of the strangest forms of loneliness. You understand people so well that it becomes hard to rely on them. You see their wounds, their contradictions, their fears, their blind spots. You understand why they behave the way they do, even when it hurts you. And once you understand, you don't get angry, you just get quieter. You stop expecting depth from people who haven't met their own yet. The truth you rarely admit. You aren't longing for your past. You're longing for people you haven't met yet, people who think like you think, feel like you feel, speak the same emotional language, people who won't require you to dilute yourself. Until then, the world feels unfamiliar, like you're living ahead of your time. You're not broken, you're early. Here's what matters most. You're not lonely because you're unlovable. You're lonely because you're growing faster than your environment. You're not distant because you don't care. You're distant because your mind doesn't settle for half-truths. You're not misunderstood because you're strange. You're misunderstood because you're rare. People like you don't find many connections. But the ones you do find are deep, real, and life-changing. Until then, loneliness isn't punishment. It's preparation. Sometimes I think the world saves certain people for later in life. Not because they're hard to love, but because the people who can meet them are still becoming themselves. Real intelligence isn't about knowing more. It's about feeling life with a kind of sincerity that takes time to find. So don't harden yourself. Don't rush to fix your loneliness. And don't shrink your depth just to stay close to people who can't meet you there. You're not meant to fit smaller spaces. You're meant to grow until the right people recognize you. Take care of your mind. It's a rare one. I'll talk to you soon.